tell the story of an aging generation of dream chasers. In that passionate era, the protagonist carried a longing for a better life and married love. From a bustling metropolis to a small border town, after experiencing the baptism of wind and sand, I finally fell in love with the desert and Gobi, and guarded him for a lifetime. Chapter 1. Joyful Eyebrow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the winter of 1950, Gaolu Town, a small town in northern Jiangsu, woke up in the morning light. The winter of this year was particularly cold, with several days of heavy snowfall and a silver coating. The cold wind howled past the treetops, and the cone-shaped long and short ice skates hanging under the eaves shimmered in the sunlight. Gaolu Town is a century-old ancient town located to the north of Huaihai Highway, adjacent to Shuzhou, with convenient transportation. There are two main streets in Gaolu Town. The north-south Zhongda Street and the east-west Kaishiku Street. Zhongdaiji is the longest street in the town, with a road paved with bluestone slabs that has been honed over 100 years. It is as smooth and delicate as jade, emitting a faint light under the reflection of the sun and moon. The shops facing the street are arranged in a neat and orderly manner, all with blue bricks, black tiles, and black painted door panels. Although slightly dilapidated, it reflects an ancient charm. The rain eaves on the street paving extend out a lot, and on rainy days, you can still go shopping on the main street without using an umbrella. The shopkeeper Tong of Tongtai grocery store lives in this ancient town. Shopkeeper Tong is a thin, tall, and frail middle-aged man. For seasons is wearing a long robe and a big coat. His narrow eyes under his thick eyebrows sparkle with deep gaze, and when he speaks softly, giving people a good sense of familiarity. Shopkeeper Tong had been operating this Tongtai grocery store before the liberation. He was honest and fair in his business dealings, and often provided assistance to people who couldn't afford it. He was highly respected by everyone. The Tongtai grocery store, owned by shopkeeper Tong, in the war-torn era before the liberation, no matter how hard shopkeeper Tong worked, he could only barely sustain his family's livelihood. So all along, although Tong Zhangzhu has been doing business for decades, he has no real estate in Gaolu Town. The shopkeeper Tong and his wife have 4 men and 3 women under their knees. The eldest son, Min Kong, is honest, while the second son, Min Sheng, is weak and sickly. After the eldest son and the second son got married, they lived in Xiaotong village, about 8 miles west of Gaolu Town, where there is an ancestral home owned by the shopkeeper Tong. The 2 daughter-in-law were child brides who were sent to their homes to avoid war before liberation. Lao San Minjian has been exceptionally intelligent since childhood. Although he has not attended school, he has learned many skills from following his father's footsteps. He can not only write accounts, but also use both hands to do abacus. After getting married, Minjian lived in Luweizi, more than 10 miles away from Gaolu Town. Every day, his third son would walk early to the grocery store, brew a pot of tea for his father, and clean the outside of the store spotlessly waiting for him. Shopkeeper Tong, his wife, and 3 daughters, as well as his youngest son Minfu, have been living in 3 shabby rooms rented from Shiho Street in Gaolu Town for many years. Although the house is simple, it is tidy. Above the table in the main room hung a calligraphy and painting with the words, "Carrying goods with virtue," which was given by a friend of the shopkeeper Tong when he went south to pick up goods. A Buddha statue was also invited on the table, with a pair of white background blue flower porcelain vases placed on both sides of the statue. Tong Chiu would devoutly offer incense on the 1st and 15th days of the Lunar New Year. On both sides of the table, there is a Grand Tutor's chair. In the middle of the room, there is a stable 8 immortals table, and 8 chairs slightly smaller than the Grand Tutor's chair are arranged in all directions of the 8 immortals table. The walls on both sides of the main house are tied with large sorghum stalks and covered with yellow mud, separating the east and west houses. The east room is the residence of shopkeeper Tong and his wife, while the west room is the residence of 3 daughters. When his youngest son Tong Minfu returned from the county high school on Sunday, he set up a temporary bed in his parents' house to sleep for a day. Tong Minfu, born in 1935, was the most knowledgeable person in his family, and he was the only one among his siblings who attended school. He was admitted to Pingning County High School in 1950, and the shopkeeper Tong happily said, "As long as you read well, wherever you go, your father will provide you with education." A small pot house was built on the east mountain wall outside with sorghum straw, which was smoky and black with flames. Shopkeeper Tong once saved up some money by frugality, and purchased more than 10 acres of land in his ancestral home, Xiatongai. But after experiencing a disaster, they all sold out for the sake of life. Speaking of that disaster, it was truly heart-wrenching. That was the deep winter of 1947. In order to buy some scarce goods from the south before the spring festival, manager Tong brought all his savings and sailed south in the winter month to buy a ship of New Year's goods. On the way back, while passing through the Gaoyu section of the canal, he unfortunately encountered bandits. The kidnappers placed a knife around the neck of the boatman and instructed him to turn the bow of the ship. Then, they threw the shopkeeper Tong off the ship and set off. Mr. Tong, the shopkeeper, is now on the bank of the canal, calling the heavens and the earth inauspicious. He begged along the canal empty-handed, wearing a cotton robe and coat, and finally returned to his home in northern Jiangsu. Shopkeeper Tong suffered from cold and hunger along the way, and lost all his belongings. After returning home, he fell seriously ill and lay down for 6 months. After the liberation of the land, the eldest and second naturally became poor and lower-middle peasants, and were also given their own land. Shopkeeper Tong, his wife, as well as his third and fourth sons and 3 daughters, have become small businesses due to their long-term residence in Gaolu town and continue to live in the shabby houses on Shiho Street. The family is divided into 2 different groups. Non-agricultural household registration and agricultural household registration. The honorable identity of the first and second leaders as poor and lower-middle peasants has made Tong Qiushi feel compelled to sell his land earlier. Disappointment turns into happiness. Because she has seen many terrifying scenes of landlords and wealthy farmers being criticized. Well, before dawn, Tong Lanji, the eldest daughter of shopkeeper Tong, came to the pond outside the south gate of the town to wash clothes, wearing a big cotton jacket with a red background and yellow flowers, holding a mallet in her hand. The surface of the pond was covered in a thick layer of ice. Tong Lanji used a mallet to vigorously smash the ice surface, and soon a hole was created. She used a wooden bucket to extract hot water from the hole and quickly pounded clothes on the stone slab by the pond. A little slower, the clothes and stone slabs would freeze and stick together. Lanji's hands, covered in chilblains, were flushed with cold, and were shaken to the point of opening a bloody opening. The crimson blood dripped out, and her hands felt as piercing as needles. The bright red sun jumped out of the horizon, and busy figures had already appeared on the main street. The vendor in the morning market had already removed the door and sold the deep-fried dough sticks that had just come out of the pot. Deep-fried dough sticks, soybean milk ray. Occasionally, someone pushes a unicycle over the bluestone slabs on the main street, making a creaking sound. The hanging stove pancakes were steaming hot, and the tempting aroma seduced the hungry people, making them envious. Sigh. How many poor people who have just survived the war can go and buy a feast? Manager Tong got up and put on a cotton robe, then sat by the bed coughing. Tong Qiushi, the wife of shopkeeper Tong, was cooking porridge when she heard the sound. She quickly lifted the homemade blue cloth door curtain and whispered, "His father. Did he catch a cold again? Should Lanji go and invite a gentleman to take a look?" As she spoke, Tong Qiushi brought a spittoon and placed it in front of shopkeeper Tong. "It has been snowing for several days. If it stops, it will be even colder. Don't go to the store today, right?" Shopkeeper Tong spat out phlegm and said, It's not a problem. Bring me breakfast." Tong Qiushi walked with 2 small feet to the small pothouse next to the mountain wall outside the door and brought a specially cooked egg and a bowl of porridge for her husband. A mixed grain pancake. Turning around, he picked up the honeycomb coal stove and placed it next to the copper shopkeeper. A pair of roasted cotton shoes were already placed at the feet of shopkeeper Tong. People from northern Jiangsu can only keep warm in winter like this, unlike Shandong people who set up a kong in their house, light a fire, and cook. The house is warm and cozy. 1 fried egg a day is a unique treatment for shopkeeper Tong. The eggs laid by the chickens at home are usually taken to the grocery store for sale, except for Mr. Tong who eats 1 every day. Shopkeeper Tong sat by the bed and spat out phlegm again. He rubbed his thin cheeks with both hands, and his sleepy eyes immediately emitted a bright and lively gaze. After the liberation, Zhongshan suit and Jifang zhuang had already replaced long robes and coats, representing a brand new era. But shopkeeper Tong still likes to wear long clothes. In summer, it is a blue robe, and in winter, it is a black cotton robe. The shopkeeper put his foot into the warm cotton shoes and sat up at the dinner table. He slowly picked up congee. The fried eggs were cold. He stuffed the eggs into the porridge bowl and chewed the crisp pancakes in his mouth. After dinner, shopkeeper Tong took the warm glove tube handed over by his wife and prepared to go out. At this moment, Lanji carried a large basin of washed clothes and strode over the threshold to enter. Lanji saw that her father was about to go out, so she quickly put down the basin. She stuffed her numb and red hand into the sleeve of her cotton jacket, and with a flick of her braid, she chased after her father, saying, "Dad. I have something to tell you. Please wait a moment." Shopkeeper Tong looked at Lanji and sat at the dinner table with a smile, saying, "Look at how cold you are. Why don't you go wash yourself at noon? Drink a bowl of hot soup and keep warm. Don't worry. Dad, listen to you speak slowly. Did you tell Dad again about the victory of the volunteer army? Dad. I have told you several times about the great victory of the volunteer army. Today, what I want to tell you is that the teacher of the literacy class praised me for being able to read quickly, and I would like to recommend Tong Guixiang from my aunt's house to study at Gaolu Town Senior Primary School." Upon hearing Lanji's words, the shopkeeper Tong couldn't help but chuckle and shook his head, saying, "Child, you're already 18 years old and almost looking for your mother-in-law's family. It's better to go to school with your younger sister, who is 8 years younger than you. You can help your mother at home during the day and go to the literacy class at night to recognize a few characters." Lanji's eyes turned red when she heard her father say this. He said, "Dad. Whatever you say, I'm going to. I know all the words in the literacy class, and I need to read more books. In 1948, I wanted to go with the People's Liberation Army, but my mother didn't agree. At that time, my mother gave birth to a younger sister who was giving birth, and I knew she was in trouble at that time. I didn't blame her either. The literacy class teacher said that young people should study culture well, and in the future, we need people with culture in consolidating the fruits of victory and building a new China." Tong Qiu, who has been standing by silently, said, "Good girl, how can such a big sister run around? It's okay to go to the literacy class with sisters in the neighborhood at night. Your eldest brother and second brother also read in the literacy class in the village. Besides, if you really go to school and stay away from home all day, you can't do without help from your mother who has so many affairs at home and abroad." Mother's words made Lanji's emotions even more excited. Lanji picked up her father's hand and shook it vigorously, saying, "Dad, just promise me. The teachers in the literacy class have already agreed to recommend me to Teacher Wang from Gaolu Town Senior Primary School. I promise not to delay my family's affairs and studies, isn't it okay?" Tong Qiushi waved his hand at his wife on the side. Lanji couldn't let go of both her father and mother and turned around in sadness, shedding tears. Shopkeeper Tong looked at his crying daughter and softened his heart, saying, it's all because my father didn't have the ability to make you suffer with me. Since the bandit robbery before liberation, our family has been in a bad situation. Not to mention that you are a daughter, even your brothers haven't read since childhood. Our family did everything we could to make your younger brother go to school since childhood. Your younger sister's ability to read is also thanks to Chairman Mao's blessing. You can go if you think so. After liberation, being able to read is actually a good thing. Tong Qiushi sighed and said, my daughter just needs to learn how to do needlework. It's all men's business to read any books. Tong, the shopkeeper, looked at Tong Qiushi and said, son of a bitch, let Lanji go. Sir, you have to listen. This child has been in the family for so many years, and thanks to her, she has brought up her younger brother, sister, and younger sister, which has also dragged down the child. Now that she has the determination, let her go. Reading and literacy is a good thing in itself. If she really follows the team in 4 or 8 years, then we are now glorious military dependents. Speaking of the opportunity in 1948, it was really a bit regrettable. During the intense Huaihai campaign in 1948, there was a People's Liberation Army field medical rescue team stationed in Gaolu town. There are many wounded people sent down from the front line every day. Lanji actively joined the medical team with the Sisters of the Women's Rescue Association. During the rescue, some sisters were too frightened to approach the seriously wounded. Lanji was also a bit jumpy at first, but she calmly imitated the appearance of other field rescue team members, carrying a sterile tray filled with dressings, wiping the wounds of the wounded heroes, and doing some simple bandages to stop bleeding. She cared for every soldier who fought against the reactionary Kuomintang with great enthusiasm, like taking care of her elder brother. Comrades and wounded soldiers of the People's Liberation Army medical team all like this little girl who talks like a silver bell and walks like a gust of wind. Later, when the medical team withdrew, the head of the ambulance team personally came to work at home and wanted to take Lanji away. Lanji also wants to become a member of the People's Liberation Army ambulance team, wear military uniforms, and become a true PLA soldier. But she politely refused. Later, it was discovered that the child's daughter-in-law and sister-in-law from the neighbor's house had secretly followed the People's Liberation Army at that time. Lanji regretfully complained to herself. Why didn't I secretly follow her like that child bride and sister-in-law? Speaking of this past, Tong Qiu stopped speaking. Lanji came to his mother and said, Mother. Just let me go. The school is not far from home, and I won't miss out on family matters. Tong Qiu nodded at his daughter's forehead and said, Listen to your father, come back early after school. Lanji immediately felt happy, wiped away her tears, took up her bowl of rice, and drank a bowl of congee at one go. She quickly hung the newly washed clothes on the line, and came to Tong Guixiang's home as soon as she went out. Tong Guixiang is 3 years younger than Tong Lanji. The two are close sisters of the same family. Guixiang had just gotten up and was sweeping the floor when she saw Tong Lanji come in. She grabbed Lanji's hand and asked, Did your father and mother agree? Tong Lanji nodded happily and said, At first, my father and mother were not willing. After all, I agreed. What about you? I saw your swollen eyes, didn't my aunt agree to your going to school? Guixiang helplessly pointed to her younger brothers and sisters who were still sleeping in bed and said, My mother said that if I go to school, who cares about these people? The youngest brother is just a little scumbag. Lanji thought for a moment and said, I'll go talk to your father. Guixiang grabbed Lanji, wiped away her tears with her sleeve, and lowered her head, saying, You know, everything in my family is up to my mother. My father only cares about his work and can't be the head of the family. Yesterday, when I came back and said that my mother was scolding me, she scolded me all over the place. It's really. Guixiang. Shout your younger brother and sister up for dinner. Your older brother will be late for school soon. Suddenly, Guixiang's mother shouted loudly outside the door. Guixiang glared out fiercely and said to Lanji, my older brother is the only one in my family who goes to school. Tong Lanji leaned out of the window and saw Gui Xiangyang serving a meal. She ran out and said, "Auntie, I'll help you with it." "Oh. Lanji, how often will you come?" said Gui Xiangyang. "Auntie. I'm here for a while, Auntie." "Let me tell you something," Lanji tentatively said. "My niece, I know what you're going to say. It's not that I don't want Daya to make progress. You look at the house and point your finger at her. Her younger brothers and sisters are still young, so we need her to take care of them. Besides, our family's conditions are not better than yours. At least you have a small shop, and we all rely on digging in the soil to eat. She's already 13 years old this year, and in a few years, she will be promised to her husband's family. What kind of education will she attend?" Lanji saw that she couldn't match Guixiang's mother, so she walked back home with a hint of hesitation. "I secretly blame my aunt in my heart." She silently picked up her family's needle basket, rummaged through a few floral cloth scraps, and began sewing her own backpack. Chapter 2. Education. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 3. Deep Siblings. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 4. Father's Love Like a Mountain. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 5. Introduction. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 6. A daughter in the same family becomes young and successful. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. 7,000-mile boating. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 8. Confession. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 9. Revealing Your Heart. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 10. Good News. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text.